Early signing period is over, and the Florida Gators desperately need to hit the transfer portal hard now. And let's talk about that before spring ball.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. With the Florida Gators, it's transfer portal season. Okay, hi, happy Friday. Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter, WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. All that fun stuff. Florida, you have to hit the transfer portal window or the transfer portal hard. The first window is closing. All that means is that the players can't enter the portal from January 4th. You're going to have players that after that window, you can have them visit campus. You can do everything. They just can't enter the portal. So once January 4th hits, we'll know who's in the portal. We'll know all the options available. And then you'll be able to actually make moves there. But for the Florida Gators, you know that you desperately need help in multiple spots. And we'll start by talking about the edge group for the Gators, because first off, lost Princely Umanmielen. That one's a bit of a killer here with just that Jack room in general, that Jack spot. There's youth there, but there's kind of no proven talent. And yeah, Kelby Collins, CJ Searcy played very well in their limited snaps, but again, that's not proven talent. Playing well in limited snaps does not mean that you will continue that and carry that over, because obviously with volume, you get variance. So you don't know that, but Florida, either way, you need to bring in some experienced, established talent from the portal. And there's a ton of guys out there now. Sure, Trey Moore, I believe it was, from UTSA is now with Texas, and he's off the board. But you look at Purdue edge Nick Scorton, when he hit the portal, said Steph has contacted him, a very productive pass rusher from Purdue, which is, again, that pass rush production is something that can be fickle, because we talked about pressures with Princely Umanmielen, and a bunch of Florida Gators fans just didn't care about the pressures, because if you're not getting a sack, then whatever it might be. But again, pressures force bad decisions, force throwaways, force interceptions, whatever it might be. But pass rush productivity, again, can be fickle. And so we can, like, we talk about Antoine Powell-Ryland had a ton of sacks this year. Wasn't a true amount of sacks, because he wasn't really wrecking games out there. A lot of those were lightly blocked or unblocked in general. Not to dismiss it, but I'm just saying that pass rush productivity, not always something that you can just chalk up as fact. So I will say that there's that, but Purdue edge Nick Scorton is one of the more productive pass rushers in the country this year, especially at the Power 5 level. And in the Big Ten, I like to look at the Big Ten as if you can be productive in the Big Ten as a pass rusher, that generally will translate well to the next level, whether that's the NFL or the SEC, because the Big Ten is, the offensive line talent is there in the Big Ten. Like it's always been there. It probably always will be there. Nick Scorton had 42 pressures, 8 sacks in 11 games played, just 264 pass rush reps, because he did play a spot where, would have him dropping back into coverage and moving around even a little bit there. So that's something that he'll be used to doing if he were to be a Florida Gator. And we know that, Austin Armstrong is going to make you do it every now and then anyway. And again, Nick Scorton did it relatively frequently. I think for me, he had far too many games, which you can chalk this to Princely as well. Far too many games where it just felt like he wasn't on the whole time. And I don't mean taking plays off. I just mean he wasn't making an impact on some of these plays. It just wasn't as consistent as it maybe should have been or could have been. So I mean, there's Nick Scorton with that. You can look into the MAC, which is I love the MAC, where Miami edge Caden Woolard is one where he's more versatile in every way. I do think that Caden Woolard is more versatile in any way. We know that the staff's been in contact with him. Not sure of an offer at this point, but an edge from Miami of Ohio, which, they beat my Toledo Rockets in the MAC championship. Hate him. But Caden Woolard is someone who has played both the pass rushing outside linebacker, the stand-up edge rusher role, and a more traditional, I guess, defensive end role as well. So Caden Woolard is someone who can do that. He's also a decent pass rusher, decent run defender. I don't even want to say decent. He was a good pass rusher and a decent run defender. So Caden Woolard this season had 58 pressures, 10 sacks, and he did it on 443 pass rush reps. He was someone who was, I think, pretty consistent in just how many pressures he would create. And then he'd have like a game where he just went off, or a game or two where he just went off. Against Toledo, he had 8 pressures in 2 games, once in a regular season game and once in the MAC championship. But Caden Woolard hit the portal. He's gone, which again, I do know that, or I do think that he could play either the stand-up spot or the hand in the dirt spot. I don't know how heavily Florida is going to pursue him. Again, they should, but I don't know how heavily they're going to pursue him, just because I feel like they don't properly use those guys. Like, I feel like they would benefit more from going, oh yeah, like on any given play, you could both be hand in the dirt, both be stand up, one hand, one whatever it might be. But Cassius Howell, on the other hand, with Bowling Green, is an outside linebacker, just straight up edge rushing, stand up pass rushing outside linebacker. 41 pressures, also 10 sacks, just like Woolard had, but Cassius Howell did it on about half the reps. Did not start the year as a starter and ended up taking that role eventually as a starter for Bowling Green. So that's where we really talk about, the productivity. I don't think it's always consistent, especially when you look at who they're playing against. But for me, I think Cassius Howell's a guy that I'm looking for more than Woolard. I think he'd be a better fit, as in the sense that I think the coaching staff would use him better than they would use Caden Woolard, or maybe even Nick Scorton. But Nick Scorton also has experience doing exactly what Florida will ask someone to do, with dropping back into coverage and being a legitimate pass rushing edge rusher. So for me, I think that Nick Scorton would be nice. We'll see if Florida's willing to push as hard as they need to push to get him and to land him. But Cassius Howell is a much more realistic one. And if Cassius Howell, who, by the way, is visiting the Florida Gators next weekend, if he's a Florida Gator, I won't insult Bowling Green for a week. A week. I'll give you that. I tweeted a day. I'll give you a week, Cassius. If you're a Florida Gator, I will not insult Bowling Green for a week. Unless you're like, I don't care about Bowling Green, then I'm letting it fly. I'm just informing you of that one. But we have to move to another spot on the defense that I think it desperately needs help. And we'll talk about that in just 1 second. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by eBay Motors. With passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. And it's also what helps keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up with, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever you need. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. I'm grouping these next two spots together because I think you can do that at defensive back is what I'm going to group together, because I think you need help at both corner and safety. Florida has been very active in the safety market. You started by taking corner. Okay. Started by taking Trickwiz Bridges from Oregon, who was recruited as a safety, moved to corner because Oregon needed him, and then lost the spot at corner. So I don't necessarily fault him for not working out there. I will say that makes me a little bit skeptical as to how he's going to work out here, just because you haven't played true safety in years. So yeah, I'm not going to go, oh, you did it in high school 4 years ago. You can translate easily. That's not how I'm going to look at things. But I will also say I'm looking at him more as a depth piece. I know that people talk about him playing nickel. I don't know how much he's going to play there, even if Jaden Hill does not come back. But when we're talking about just, hey, you need a pure depth piece at safety, Trickwiz Bridges is that. But they're still being very active in the transfer portal right now with multiple safeties that they're contacting after the fact, that they're still just reaching out to and still trying to add to their class. Which, again, not surprising, but it's something that Florida is looking to do. And there's also other spots where you can talk about this, but today we're just talking about those main spots, or these three main spots. But I think looking at safety, you've got Jaden Voisin from South Alabama. You've got Kendrick Simpkins from Western Kentucky. You've already added, like I said, Trickwiz Bridges. They're looking for multiple spots at safety already, again, because you lost so much. You lost, again, Kamari Wilson's just a depth piece that wasn't doing much at all, but you lost him. Miguel Mitchell hit the transfer portal. He played a ton of snaps. RJ Moten was underwhelming. Jadarius Perkins left after the Utah game, who would have been competing for star, but not really. But for Florida, you've got to add some depth in at safety. You desperately need to add some help there, preferably experienced depth, because the guys that you do have there that play right now, Jordan Castell, Bryce Thornton, big fan of what they brought to the table, would like, one, more consistency, and two, more experience to kind of just minimize some of the errors. So Florida at defensive back, they know they need help at safety. At cornerback, cornerbacks in 2023 for the Florida Gators sucked. I want to say sucked. I think sucked is a fair word to use, because Jason Marshall allowed, I think it was 24 yards per completion, and Jalen Kimber was at about 19 and a half yards per completion. And just so you know, those aren't good numbers at all. In fact, they're among the nation's worst numbers at cornerback. So to say that they were bad on the outside would be an understatement. And I understand that people go, oh, like, Jason Marshall didn't allow a ton of completions. I don't care if he didn't allow a ton of completions, because he still allowed some of the one of the highest yardage totals amongst cornerbacks in college, and one of the highest yards per completion numbers in college football. That's bad. I don't care if you allow one completion a game, but it's a 30-yard bomb. Yeah, buddy. That's not good. Right? Like, I think we can all agree that those are not numbers that are SEC starter worthy. In fact, looking at the coverage numbers, amongst qualifiers, Jason Marshall Jr. allowed the second most yards per catch in the country at cornerback, allowing 24.2 yards per catch. Just 17 completions. Just 17 on the year. That's what, 1.4 per game? However, 197 yards after contact, after the catch, 412 yards total, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That is what we call bad. those numbers are bad. There's just no other way to put it. And I realize that that's not a very descriptive way to say things, but then you look at Jalen Kimber, also 19.1 yards per catch, only 3 more catches allowed as well for Jason Marshall. Also, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns. The corner play was nothing short of absolutely horrendous, disgusting, whatever you want to call it. It sucked. You have Jakeem Jackson, who's a very bright young corner. He needs a lot of work still. He's someone who's just learning the position. Teddy Foster, someone who is not expected to contribute early. He's also still learning the position. You have a cornerback problem if you're the Florida Gators, where you lack not just quantity, but quality as far as SEC caliber football players. You need help there. So for me, I think that also Florida not pursuing heavier in the corner, which I get it. There's been quite a few good there's been very few good corners who actually enter the portal, and guys are leaning more towards the draft than anything else. Florida's got to find something. Find a guy who's being overlooked. Find a MAC guy. Find a Mountain West guy. I don't care what it is, but Florida, you desperately need help in your secondary in general. But at cornerback, especially for me, I think is the spot that we're going to look at more as we get through this offseason. Because man, it's hideous to watch at some points. And I get it that you're learning a new defensive system. I understand that that's a thing that people want to talk about. Like, oh yeah, you didn't allow a ton of completions, but you allowed big ones because you're learning a new defensive system. All that stuff. I don't give you that excuse, because a lot of the errors made are Jason Marshall giving up on the play because of the face mask by Will Shepherd, which again, I don't give a damn about. You play to the whistle or you get the hell off the football field. It's as simple as that. But it's also, I don't care what defensive system you're in. You should learn that you find the ball. And they don't do that. None of the corners do that. I don't get what the hell it is that's wrong with them, but none of the corners turned their heads and made a play on the ball really this year. It was bad, just piss poor corner play. Unacceptable for Florida. I get it. Florida's fallen off from the Urban Meyer days, all that. One thing Florida's always supposed to be good at is producing defensive backs. That's not been the case for the past few years, and it's especially not been the case this year. They've been bad. No other way to put it. We'll flip to the offensive side of the ball for the rest of the show. Before we get to that, though, let me tell you guys about Prize Picks. Prize Picks has been the best way for me to make money playing daily fantasy sports this year. If you've got skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few easy taps and research. It's simple and easy to play with quick withdrawals too, which for me, that's the biggest thing for me. I'm not waiting 48 hours. I'm not waiting 36 hours. I'm not waiting 24 hours. And with Prize Picks, I don't have to wait 24 minutes. I get my money. It's my money, and I need it now. And that's what Prize Picks lets me do. So that's why for me, Prize Picks is the number one daily fantasy sports app. So I will say thank you, Cade Cunningham, because oh my goodness, I don't care how many games they've lost, but dude produces week in and week out. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for your first deposit match up to $100. Remember that Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Florida Gators offensive tackle Micah Mazuka has entered the transfer portal, which is wild considering that, yeah, the Florida Gators needed help anyway on the offensive line in the transfer portal. Personally, I think they needed help anyway. You didn't have enough talent at tackle. You didn't have enough talent at guard, and losing Micah Mazuka, who started at right guard for you, does not help your team. I think you needed to upgrade from him anyway. We've been talking about this for a while on Locked On Gators of he needs to, or I think he just crumbled with the shoulder injury that they found in spring. And I think he just crumbled from there. I think the technique just fell apart, and he just never looked like Baylor him. like it's as simple as that. I don't think this is a case of a failed evaluation or a missed evaluation from Florida. I genuinely just think that shoulder that they found in like the beginning of spring ball just completely cooked him. And I think that it killed his technique from his footwork, like all the way down to his footwork. I think he was trying to overcompensate for the shoulder, and it just destroyed him. And that leaves you in another spot where, sure, we like Najee Harris, but the Florida Gators only had 2 SEC starter quality offensive linemen on the entire line last season. That's it. It was Jake Slaughter and Richie Leonard IV. Austin Barber did not perform like an SEC starter quality player, and neither did Damian George. Obviously, at right tackle, Micah Mazuka didn't anyway. That doesn't change, honestly. Nothing about Micah Mazuka changes leaving. Nothing about Micah Mazuka leaving changes my thought process on Florida needs to add talent to the offensive line of the port. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon comes in and fixes 1, maybe 2 positions. And I say that because he can fix 1 spot for the spot that he's playing. Maybe he fixes the right tackle spot if you truly think that moving Austin Barber back to right tackle will help him. Because this simply put, he just wasn't good at left tackle. He regressed. And that's, by the way, an absolute colossal failure by the coaching staff. He regressed from 2022 to 2023. He was a redshirt freshman in 2022, and he regressed with another year under Rob Sale, Darnell Stapleton, when he moved to left tackle. Significantly worse. So if you think moving him to right tackle will fix him, then sure. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon playing left tackle with Austin Barber at right tackle solves a little bit of your issue, but you're still looking at a team that needs offensive line help. Again, Jake Slaughter at center, Richie Leonard IV at left guard. That's it. That's it. Everyone else, not good. Damian George, not suited to play tackle at all. Like in any way, shape, or form, and that's not to be rude. He's just not good enough there. I said this when Damian George joined the program last year, that I thought he'd be better suited at guard. That I thought that the process would be, or that the thought process would be, that he's going to play at, or he's going to compete at right tackle, probably lose that battle, move to guard. In which case, Richie Leonard IV probably never would have played. But that wasn't the case. So now we look at Damian George being bad. Like, you look at him being on the tackle, he's not nimble enough to play tackle. He's not, because he's on the edge and he's got his little stance and he drops back and like finesse rushers will say, just dip right under his hands. They just dip their shoulder right under his hands. And power rushers throw him into Max Brown, because that's exactly what Jared Verse did. Threw him into Max Brown. And you can run into that issue a little bit at guard as well. But with guard, you have the luxury of sometimes just being a helper. Sometimes they're rushing at the left tackle, the center, the right guard, or the right tackle, and you get to help the center or the tackle, whoever needs it more. Then you get to just kind of play cleanup there. So sometimes you get that benefit, which could help hide Damian George being a terrible pass protector. And I have no problem saying he's a good runner. He's a good run blocker. All right. You get him pulling when it was Damian George at right tackle against Tennessee, I think it was, and they ran that counter where he came just flying off the edge. He made damn good plays. He's good as a puller. Same thing with Richie Leonard IV. I think they're both damn good as pullers. I think Richie Leonard IV is just good in general. But Damian George was not good this year. Austin Barber was not good this year. Micah Mazuka is in the transfer portal and was not good this year. And Florida, you have a lot of youth from your 2023 class and now your 2024 class. But those aren't immediate guys that you want to start. And even if they do work out as immediate starters, they're not guys that you planned on starting right away. You're lucking into that. That's it. You're lucking into success if you have Fletcher Westphal play at right tackle and he plays well immediately. You lucked into that because nobody's planning for a true freshman to start in the SEC. That's just not how things work in the real world. That's just not how they work. So you weren't planning on that. You lucked into that. So for Florida, I think you have to look at the transfer portal and go, all right, we need at least another tackle, maybe a guy who could just be a depth piece at tackle and guard. if you feel comfortable with Najee Harris at right guard or Damian George at right guard, Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon at left tackle, and Austin Barber at right tackle, maybe you look to that as these are the positions that we kind of need to address, and that's what we're going to have. Maybe you just add a depth guy, but even then, you don't have depth at the offensive line. It's kind of like safety. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work at Whole Line Sports, Giants Country NFL 33. And as always, I will see you all next time.